Talk to Fluency from beginner to fluent.
Take your English skills to the next level.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something that, well, let's be honest, can feel like a huge mountain to climb for lots of English learners. We're talking about how to get a Band 9 in IELTS speaking.
That's right. And, IELTS, the International English Language Testing System, a Band 9, that's basically near native level, the absolute top score.
And it causes so much stress, right? People get really anxious about it. But what if we told you that hitting that top band isn't really about, perfection or finding some secret trick? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain a bit. We'll show you some simple, really effective strategies. These are the things that students hitting band 7, 8, or even that, elusive band 9 consistently do. We'll pinpoint exactly where band 5 and 6 students tend to go wrong, and crucially, what the top scores do differently. It's more about understanding the game, maybe.
Exactly. A Band 9, it seems impossible to many, but honestly, it often comes down to understanding and using specific techniques. Sometimes small things people overlook. So in this deep dive, we'll break down what these high-scoring students actually do across all 3 parts of the speaking test. And what's really interesting is how these small shifts in approach can make a massive difference to your score. It makes Band 9 feel much more, possible.
Okay, yeah, let's get into it. Let's start with part 1, the beginning. This is often seen as, the chance to make a good first impression, but maybe more importantly, just to relax, get comfortable.
Absolutely crucial. If you can ease into it in part 1, you'll likely be more fluent, more confident for the whole test. Setting that positive tone right at the start is huge.
So where do people go wrong here? What are the big mistakes?
Okay, there are 2 main things we see trip up Band 5 and 6 students constantly.
Yeah.
And they really impact things like fluency, coherence, even pronunciation. First big one, memorized answers.
Ah, yes, the classic.
Right. Look, the IELTS test isn't testing your memory. It's testing your ability to communicate naturally in English. When you just reel off a memorized answer, it sounds, robotic.
Yeah, you can totally tell.
You can. The intonation's flat, it lacks natural rhythm, and honestly, it could even be seen as trying to cheat the system because it's not your real speaking ability. If you had the English level, you wouldn't need to memorize, right?
Good point.
Think about this example someone gave describing India. India is a very populated country. It's the most populated country in the world right now.
Yeah.
And we have lots of cultures and lots of traditions, and we have many, many different languages, and we also have different religions, and we also celebrate them very much.
Yeah, it sounds like reading. Very stiff.
Exactly. That lack of flow, the simple, repetitive sentences, it just screams lower brand for fluency and coherence, and it affects the pronunciation score, too, because the intonation isn't natural. The second mistake, going way off topic or giving super long answers.
Right. Rambling.
Yeah. Students sometimes complain, the examiner kept interrupting me.
Right.
But it's usually not rudeness. In part 1, the examiner has a set number of questions, maybe 9 to 12. They need to ask to cover different topics and gauge your vocabulary range.
Okay.
So if you launch into this massive monologue for every simple question, they have to cut you off to get through the list. Imagine being asked about your hometown, and you start talking about history, culture, famous people, food, weather, nightlife.
Whoa, yeah, too much for part 1.
Way too much.
Yeah.
It actually makes you seem less fluent because you're not managing the conversation appropriately for that part of the test.
Okay, that paints a very clear picture of the don'ts. So, flipping that, what do the band 7, 8, and 9 students do in part 1? What's the difference?
It's what we call the coffee shop conversation strategy. It's simple, really. High-scoring students, they answer the question directly, no messing about,
Yeah.
and then you just add a little bit more detail.
A little bit, like what?
Could be a short explanation, maybe a quick example, or even a tiny personal story. Just a sentence or 2 extra. The absolute key is speaking naturally, like you're just chatting with someone you met.
Okay, not performing.
Exactly. That genuine, unscripted feel is what examiners are listening for. It shows your real fluency and coherence. It shows you can use vocabulary spontaneously. That's lexical resource. And it shows natural rhythm and intonation for pronunciation. It hits all the key criteria for the higher bands.
Got examples?
Yeah, sure. So, question. Is your daily routine different at the weekend compared to during the week? High-scoring answer.
Yes.
100%. So the weekdays are for work, mainly being productive, paying the bills, and the weekends I get to do whatever I want to do. So really treasure and enjoy my weekends.
Nice. Short, direct, natural.
Totally.
Yep.
Or this one. Do you prefer to read magazines or newspapers? High-scoring answer. Definitely magazines. Mostly on the topics of fashion or interior design.
Yeah.
This is what I really like, because I like to see creative sides from all over the world. I like to see what people are talking about, what's new, what's trending. And I like to learn, I like to have knowledge of things. What is this called or what is that called? Because usually when you see pictures, you don't usually know what it's called.
Yeah.
So when you read a magazine, that's where you get to know, oh, this fabric is called this or this decoration is called that. So I think it's very good on information.
Okay, so they answered directly magazines and then gave a clear why with personal reasons and even a little example about learning names of things. Shows good vocabulary, too.
Natural development.
So, wrapping up part 1 for that Band 9 goal, keep it natural, answer directly, add just a touch of personal detail, make it feel like a relaxed chat. It sets you up well. Okay, let's move to part 2 then, the long turn. This one definitely scares people. You get that cue card, the topic card with prompts, and you have to talk for up to 2 minutes. That feels like forever when you're under pressure.
It really can. And the big trap here, for Band 5 and 6 students especially, is treating those bullet points on the cue card like a rigid checklist.
Meaning they feel they have to talk about each point in order?
Precisely. They go through point 1, point 2, point 3. But the problem is they often run out of things to say really quickly after just briefly touching on each one. Their fluency and coherence just tanks.
Or maybe they don't know much about one point.
Exactly. They hit a bullet point they can't talk much about. They stumble, get stressed, fluency breaks down, and they can't show off their vocabulary, their lexical resource either. Think about a student asked to describe some food or drink that you learned to prepare. The card might say what it was, when, where you learned, how, and how you felt. A lower scoring student might go, well, I don't cook much. My wife does. But a cocktail, maybe. A Bloody Mary. I learned it one morning. I was thirsty. Looked on YouTube. How I felt. I don't know. It quenched my thirst.
Yeah, you can hear them hitting a wall. Probably only lasted 30 seconds.
If that. They answered the points, kind of, but there's no depth, no fluency, very limited language.
Okay, so clearly just ticking off bullet points isn't the way. What's the Band 9 approach to part 2 then? The game changer.
The key is freedom. Focus on the main topic of the card, not every single bullet point rigidly. High-scoring students allow themselves to bring in other relevant details they are comfortable discussing. Don't force yourself onto tricky bullet points.
Like what kind of other details?
Could be anything relevant. A richer description, a personal story connected to the topic, how you feel about it in more depth, maybe something about its history or your past experiences, or even future plans related to it. Remember, the goal isn't a bullet point checklist. It's to speak fluently and coherently for up to 2 minutes. It's your chance to show off your vocabulary range, use different sentence structures, accurately hitting those lexical reinforcement and grammatical range criteria.
Okay, tell me about that Paneer example.
All right, so the Band 9 student asked about food they learned to prepare. Instead of just saying, Guinea, YouTube, felt good, listen to this. I'm pescatarian, so I don't eat meat, and I have a gluten intolerance, so I can't eat a lot of Indian food. So this is a little recipe that I learned how to make, which is basically paneer. We call it cottage cheese in English. It's like a spiced tomato base with cottage cheese with a paratha roti, but it's made out of ragi flour, which is gluten-free and super rich in calcium, very good for people with diabetes, although I don't have diabetes. It's very nutritious. Basically, together, it's the perfect meal, keeps you full. I love being healthy. I try to be as healthy as I can. So, yeah, that's probably my go-to meal in the evening because I don't have to think about it. I have all the ingredients. I don't have to think about how to make it. It's kind of automatic, and it's delicious, which is the most important part. Sometimes when I'm feeling adventurous, I like to eat it with yogurt, either Greek yogurt or regular yogurt, and add a couple Indian spices into it and mix it up. So the spiciness of the paneer cottage cheese, the drier, stiffer texture of the ragi roti, and the creaminess and coldness of the yogurt is a match made in heaven.
Wow. Okay, totally different. They barely stuck to the when, where, how bullet points. They just talked about the dish, their connection to it, why they like it, how they eat it.
Exactly. They used the main topic food they learned to prepare as a launch pad. They wove in personal details, dietary needs, nutrition, enjoyment, variations. It's all relevant to the topic, flows naturally, and sustains for the full time, showing great language skills.
So the real secret is giving yourself permission to talk about what you actually know and care about related to the topic, instead of getting bogged down by the prompts, fluency and coherence over ticking boxes.
You got it.
All right, let's move into the deep end. Part 3. Often seen as the toughest part. The questions get more abstract, more challenging.
Definitely. They require more discussion, opinion, maybe speculation.
So what are the absolute no-nos here for someone aiming high? What should Band 5 and 6 students avoid?
Two critical things never to do in Part 3. They kill your chances of showing higher-level skills. First, no response. Just saying, I don't know, or staying silent.
Yeah, that seems obvious, but why is it so bad?
Because it gives the examiner nothing to assess. The test is designed to push you. Even if the topic is unfamiliar, silence just signals your English isn't up to the task. It stops the assessment right there for that question.
Okay, what's the second thing?
Giving really short, underdeveloped answers. Sometimes it's not even lack of English. After maybe 10, 12 minutes of speaking under pressure, people get tired.
Fatigue sets in.
Yeah, and they kind of surrender. They give a short answer that basically says, I'm done, or my level isn't high enough for this. Either way, short answers prevent you from showing the depth, the range of grammar and vocabulary needed for bands 7, 8, or 9.
Makes sense. You can't demonstrate what you don't say. Okay, but what about when the questions genuinely feel really hard, like out of left field?
Okay, here's something surprising, something most test takers don't realize.
Yeah.
If you get hit with a really difficult abstract question in Part 3, that's actually a good sign.
Really? How so?
It means the examiner thinks you might already be performing at a band 7 level or higher. They're deliberately giving you challenging questions to see if you can stretch further, to differentiate between a band 7 and 8, or even a 9. They need to see how you handle complex ideas.
Wow, okay, so instead of panicking, you should maybe feel a little encouraged.
Exactly. Take it as a compliment. They believe you might have more to show.
So, knowing that, how should you actually tackle these tough ones to push for that band 9?
Rule number 1, always attempt an answer, even if you feel totally lost on the topic.
But how, if you genuinely don't know much about it?
Remember, it's a speaking test, not a knowledge quiz. They're not testing your expertise on AI or climate policy. They're testing your English communication skills. So, you can acknowledge your limited knowledge, but still offer a thought. Like, if asked about AI in education, you could say something like, well, I'm not really an expert on AI and education, to be honest. However, from what I understand, AI is developing rapidly. Maybe it could take over some teaching tasks, but I don't think it could replace, the human element, like empathy from a teacher.
Okay, so you show you can structure a thought, use some decent vocabulary, even if you preface it with, I'm not sure.
Precisely. It shows you're willing to engage, you can formulate an opinion, and allows the examiner to assess your language. It's way better than silence or a one-word answer. And often, they might then gently steer the conversation if they see you struggling with the topic itself.
Right. And beyond just attempting an answer, how do the really high-scoring students structure their responses in Part 3 to show that depth?
They tend to follow a kind of natural 4-part structure for developing their answers. It really showcases everything: fluency, coherence, grammar, vocabulary. First, they give a direct answer to the question, clear and immediate.
Okay.
Second, they explain why they think that. They elaborate on their reasoning.
Makes sense.
Third, they often back it up with an example or maybe a short personal anecdote or observation. Add substance.
Right, makes it more concrete.
And finally, fourth, they often develop the answer a bit further. Maybe they show the other side of the argument or introduce a related point to show broader thinking. This really demonstrates that high-level ability to discuss complex issues.
Can you give an example of that structure?
Sure. Let's take the question. What skills does a person need to be a great chef? A band 9 type answer might go. 1, direct answer. Oh, interesting. Well, I think patience is probably key. 2, why? Because from what I've heard, I'm not a chef. It seems like there's a lot of trial and error involved in perfecting dishes. So you need patience for that and escape. 3, example support. And alongside patience, probably a real passion for the food itself. Understanding where ingredients come from, the background of cuisines. If you're not passionate, delving that deep might feel like a chore. Develop. Yeah. And maybe also a good environment. Like having access to good mentors, good produce, good resources, that must help someone really hone their craft beyond just the basic skills.
Okay, yeah, I can see the structure. Direct answer, patience. Why? Trial and error. Support, passion, understanding ingredients, and further development. Good environment. It flows really well and covers a lot of ground.
Exactly. It shows depth, organization, good vocabulary, and complex sentence structures naturally woven together. That's what pushes you into those top bands. So if we pull everything together now, from Part 1's chatty start, through Part 2's focused storytelling, to Part 3's developed discussion, the single biggest takeaway, the common thread for Band 7, 8, and 9 students is this. Their interaction with the examiner feels like a normal conversation.
Not like a test.
Less like a formal test, yes. They speak naturally. They use the English they actually have, confidently. And importantly, they subtly guide the conversation towards things they can talk about well, especially in parts 2 and 3. There aren't really any hacks or tricks to fool the examiner. It's about demonstrating genuine communicative competence.
That emphasis on natural communication is really powerful and suggests the best preparation isn't just memorizing fancy words, but practicing speaking so these strategies become automatic so it feels natural to you too.
Absolutely. Practice makes it feel less like an exam and more like just talking.
Showing what you can genuinely do with the language confidently. So for you, our listener, here's something to think about. How might framing the IELTS speaking test in your mind as simply another conversation, maybe with a new acquaintance, rather than this high-pressure exam, how might that shift change how you prepare and maybe even how you perform on the day? Something to consider. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. See you later and Talk to Fluency YouTube channel. Subscribe for more. Bye.
Talk to Fluency from beginner to fluent.
Take your English skills to the next level.